What's going on, YouTube? Metal Complex here with another review slash overview of an awesome folding knife. This is the 2018 Microtech Socom Elite in M390 steel. Again, it has been a while since I've done an upload, but I've got my hands on a whole bunch of new stuff, some really cool stuff, and one super cool knife that's not going to be in for another couple of weeks, maybe 3-4 weeks at the most, but keep your eyes out for that upload. I am really excited for that, and it's unlikely that I will ever have anything else again like that on my channel, so that'll be a fun upload. But really excited about this knife. So quick story on this guy. Every year for our anniversary, my wife buys me a knife on the condition that I am not allowed to ask for anything specific. She does all the research. She looks things up based on what she's heard me yammer on about over the last couple of years, and then she finds one for herself. And this year she ended up with a Microtech Socom Elite, which I wasn't even aware that at the time that these were back out again. My understanding was the last run was in 2012. There have been some changes. We'll go over all of that. But because this was a gift, I obviously will never trade it or sell it, which means I get to carry it and I don't have to feel bad about using it. So believe it or not, I actually carry this knife. Let's do the size comparison here on my terrible console. Terrible for giving a relative size comparison there. Good night. Okay, let's get these butt to butt. The Microtech Socom Elite is a huge knife. The Manix 2's coming in at 8 inches overall with a 3.5 inch blade, 3-inch cutting edge. The Microtech Socom Elite comes in at about 9.12 inches overall with a 4-inch blade, probably a 3.75 inch cutting edge. Now, here's what's cool. For those of you who can justify the 5 ounces on the Manix 2, the Microtech Socom weighs 5 1/4, and for a lot of people that's going to be a deal breaker because of this kind of ridiculous everyday carry weight rule that people have come up with, where a knife has to be under 4 ounces or it's not a good knife. I know that there are some people who have reservations on weight, you know, but make exceptions for length, blah blah. I think Nut and Fancy kind of set that standard, but even he says, you know, I'll go up in weight if I gain something in return, which oftentimes ends up being a more usable or extended cutting edge. And so I think 5 1/4 ounces, which is what this guy weighs, is pretty amazing, considering this thing is literally about the same size as an XM24, Hinder XM24. Not everybody's handled one of those, but that's a $600 titanium frame lock that also has a actually I believe it's a .185 stock or .187 stock on the XM24. This is a .19 stock, basically the same stock. Same length of blade and same overall length, but the XM24 weighs 7.8 ounces officially on Hinder's website there. So for this being as big as it is, 5 1/4 ounces I think is pretty amazing, especially when you consider the blade to handle ratio. I mean, seriously. By the way, this is a free dropper. Super smooth. We'll talk about that. Tip comes all the way down to there. You can see there. Blade to handle ratio is amazing. Balance is right about here. It's a little forward towards the blade. Balance point for reference about right here. Just so you guys know. Pretty cool. Actually feels a lot lighter in hand than you would expect. This thing looks like it would be really heavy, but it's not. And that is, of course, due to the fact, some people know, some people don't, that the handle and frame are made from aluminum, but not the industry standard and what seems to have been the Microtech standard for so long of 6061 T6 aluminum, which is a great grade of aluminum, aircraft aluminum. This is 7075 T6, and up until the Socom, I did not know that that was a thing. I had to actually do some research on 7075. So, correct me if I'm wrong, people who know stuff about guns or what other applications 7075 is in, but from what I've read, the short explanation is 7075 is about twice as strong and or twice as impact resistant as 6061 T6. They sacrifice some corrosion resistance, but it's still plenty corrosion resistant to justify for a knife frame. Certainly still more corrosion resistant than most steel frame knives, and you get that added toughness while keeping the benefit of it being super light. So the reason for that is, much like on an XM24, these thumb studs act as locking lugs or bracing lugs against the frame. Now, the original Socom in 2012 had that same design and was using 6061, and I don't think that was an issue. A lot of people speculated that it may have been an issue because of where the lock bar eventually... If you go and look at pictures of the lock bar online of the 2012 ones, a lot of times you see them way over to the right. And a lot of people speculated that maybe it was because the 6061 acting as the stop for the blade was wearing so much that it caused the lock bar to move all the way over. And as I read more into that, I found that no, that wasn't the case. That was there weren't, these knives in 2012 were not notorious for lockup problems or late lockup or failing lock or lock rock or anything like that. That's just where they locked up. And a lot of things that I read referenced Chris Reeve knives. The Sebenza 21, for example, is notorious for having a late lockup and works just fine. So that wasn't an issue, but I think it is cool that they use 7075 and added some impact resistance and toughness to the frame. I mentioned something about gun nuts correcting me, and people were probably like, what is he talking about? And then I just trailed off and didn't say anything about it. What I was going to say was I read that the M16 is made out of, or the frame is made out of 7075, or maybe certain variants of it are, or whatever, but I believe that the M16 uses the same grade of aluminum, so that's pretty cool. But again, gun enthusiasts, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know anything about guns. So other changes, the blade steel is now M390, which is really cool. I don't know if it's 100% appropriate for a super hard use knife. I mean, obviously the benefits of M390 are amazing corrosion resistance and amazing edge retention. So that's always great. You know, the edge geometry and beginning stock is oftentimes going to have to do with how edge retentive it is and how resistant it is to chipping and things like that. If you're beating the crap out of this knife, M390 can be a little bit chippy. I don't know. I'm not going to really beat on this. You know, I'm also not going to argue about what would have been the best steel for this. Originally, they were S35VN, and they probably at some point were S30V and some other blade steels. Microtech's fairly notorious for using a whole bunch of stuff and not really, you know, there's no rhyme or reason. Whatever they use is what they're using for that particular run. So that's one of the changes, and I love M390, and I've got a lot of knives in my carry rotation now, which is a lot of the stuff that I'm going to be showing on the channel coming up. But I appreciate M390 because I don't feel the need to oil it all the time. You know, I've got a knife in M4 that I carry now, and I'm always like, I need to oil it. You know, M390, I don't feel like I need to do that as much, so I appreciate it in that respect. And I also really enjoy using M390 because the edge doesn't seem to take any damage whatsoever. But mileage is going to vary. Everybody's use is going to vary. So, you know, whether or not you like the idea of this steel on this knife is going to be entirely up to your own preference. I think it's pretty cool. This swedge has been dropped down to here, which in one video that I watched, they argued that created a steeper drop down to the cutting edge and made it not quite as thin behind the edge, so it's not quite as a performance slicer now, and that they thought that was unnecessary. I would argue that it brings the strength down, the strength in the blade that seems to be more hard use oriented. The type of knife that this is aimed more at hard use or outdoor use, stuff like that. So I'm a fan of the idea they're bringing it down. I think that upper swedge looks nice. I love the thickness out here. It makes me trust this more. And as far as whether or not it's thin behind the edge, it's certainly thin enough for me. I say this a lot on my channel, I don't shave toilet paper a lot. That's not part of my daily tasks. I need it to cut, and I need it to cut well without getting hung up on stuff. You know, this certainly does that. I would say it slices just as well as any of my other really good slicers. So actually, it slices really impressively, considering this is about a fifth of an inch thick, or 0.19 stock thickness. So that's pretty cool. The blade is definitely heavy, which contributes to this action. You can see there, this is absolutely a free dropper. Pretty cool. It also has a detent ramp. So right here where you're normally passing that detent ball, this is where normally it would get caught. It glides right over it because there's a ramp carved into the blade that allows the detent ball to pass over it instead of getting caught. There's a lot of knives that are designed like that now. This one seems to be exceptionally smooth, and it's unbelievably smooth. The bearings in this allow for an incredibly smooth action, so that is really cool. Of course, the weight of the blade contributes to that, but oftentimes when it's just the weight of the blade contributing to the free fall action, you can feel the grindiness inside the pivot. This doesn't have that. It has both the benefit of the weight of the blade and having a super smooth action inside the pivot. They're no longer using the proprietary 3-hole screws or the tri-wing screws on these. You have these massive pivot screws here that are 1/4 inch on both sides. I have flipped this thing a billion times since I've got it, which is a while ago, and it has not come out of center there. You can see it's literally exactly perfect, split by the seam on these 2 pieces of aluminum. And the lockup has also stayed exactly where it was when I got it, which is hovering right around the actual engagement. Let's look on the back of it here. You can't even really see it. About 20%. Great. Came with a little bit of lock stick. It's gotten better. There's still just a hint of it left, but in my experience, actually everything I've heard about these is that people are generally experiencing a little bit of lock stick. In every single knife that I have ever owned that had lock stick, it went away from just opening it and closing it, and it's getting better, so I'm going to trust it. So just to let you know, yeah, there's a little bit of lock stick there, but I'm not really worried about it. It's pretty minor. As hard as I can flip it, it disengages pretty easily. That's what we're working with there. And I'm just barely pushing on it. So judge that the way that you will. Whole bunch of little tiny screws here. They look like they might be kind of feeble, but I watched I looked at some pictures of this thing taken apart, and those are actually pretty substantially sized screws. They don't look like it from the outside, but they are. So I trust them. There's enough of them in there that it's going to hold the frame together, and you don't see them on this side, so that's pretty cool. There are no longer the skateboard tape inlays here, or inserts here. This is more of that Track Tech material that you see on the Kershaw Blur. Feels nice, looks nice. Personally, I always like it when it's just like a texture pattern cut into aluminum, but everybody's preference is different. As far as whether or not it grips your fingers, yeah, this is not going anywhere. The ergonomics on this guy are really good. You know, I always thought through the years that this thing looked weird. It looks like a Hornet body. Like a Hornet going in for a sting. That's what it looks like to me. And out, it's also, you know, it's like starts thin and then widens out and then goes whoop and then back down. And that always looked kind of weird to me, but I understand, you know, holding it. Your finger falls right into that groove there. Fingers back here fall right onto that Track Tech string, and then you've got this nice thumb ramp. And then this jimping is actually angled downward, which is abnormal considering most knives that have jimping on the blade actually angle up. But it does work if you're going to bear down on the knife. The way that this is textured is it's heavy, but it's not sharp, so you definitely can get your finger. If I push down really hard there's plenty of grip. So I can understand why they did that, definitely. Thumb studs are massive and in an excellent position to deploy this knife, and it fires hard and reliably, and it feels amazing. This is, honestly, for a thumb stud deployment folding knife, this is the best feeling thumb stud deployer I've ever felt. That's awesome. God, I love that. Most of the time my fidget factor with knives comes from flippers, but I fidget with this one just as much just because it feels good to deploy. You know, it's got some recoil, but not so much that it's like unnecessary. And like I said, the 7075 handles the weight of these, the weight of the blade and the lugs impacting it. That's what they look like after deploying it seriously like 1,000 times since I got it. There's hardly a mark on there. So I trust the aluminum. Back here, you can see they're not really standoffs. They're just the pieces of the aluminum where they meet together. They've got some texturing on there. I don't know really what that's for. It's okay looking. I would have preferred standoffs, but it's fine. It's functional, you know. It's a flow-through design, so you still have the same idea here. You can just blow it out. The lock bar itself, let's talk about this real quick, is titanium, and you can see in there does have a steel lock bar insert, which is great. I like that. That's good for longevity. It does not have any blade play in any direction. The lockup seems to be very, very secure. You can see here on this side, those two screws there are actually what's holding that lock bar in or against the frame. And that's different from the 2012 version where it just sort of lipped into place. I watched another video where that was taken apart and shown, and so I think this is definitely a better design. I don't know if you want to call this a liner lock or a subframe lock. I'm not really sure on the terminology there, so whatever. This is a tip down right side carry only knife, and I know there's some people who don't care, and there's some people who it kind of bothers. You guys that have been watching my channel, you know that I don't prefer tip down carry. I prefer tip up carry, and I'm right-handed. And at first that really bummed me out. But I was watching, I love Jim Skelton's channel. I watch him along with Nick Shabazz and every other knife channel that everybody's super familiar with. And Jim Skelton brought up a really good point that I had never really considered. On a tip down carry knife, if it's a flipper, it's a lot more likely that in your pocket, if it were to accidentally deploy and come out, it's a lot more likely to happen if you have a flipper backed up against this side of your pocket. Something pushes on that lever and it comes out. On a thumb stud deployer, it's way less likely. I have not had this thing deploy in my pocket, and truthfully, I don't know that I've ever had a knife deploy in my pocket. The detent on this guy is plenty strong. The placement of the thumb stud is what allows the user to so easily deploy the blade, but the actual detent is very strong, very, very strong. I have no fear that this is actually going to, oh, there we go. I got it to come out and put a mark in my deal there. But you really have to shake this thing to get it to come out. So if you wanted to know exactly how much force it takes to come out, I had to raise my hand clear up to the top of my, the ceiling of my car and whip down as hard as I could to get it to deploy. I don't know what you'd need to be doing where that would happen inside of your pants pocket, but it has not deployed on me. I'm not doing a lot of sprinting with knives in my pocket, nor am I doing a lot of jumping and falling off of high structures and landing and you know, creating that type of force to get that to come out. So that's probably not going to happen. So I don't really have a problem with that. I wish it was tip up carry, but it's not. So whatever, that's fine. It has a lanyard hole back here, but I don't know how much use that's going to be since you have to carry it like this. So that's kind of weird, but okay, that's fine. It also has a glass breaker with a ball bearing, which looks really nice. It's unobtrusive. It's not pointy. I think if you're going to have a glass breaker on a knife, this is how it should look. I'm not a big fan of Microtech's gigantic, pointy, weapony glass breakers. And honestly, I don't really have a use for a glass breaker. But if it's going to be there and it looks like that, I'm okay with that. That's fine. Overall, this is an amazing knife. And the 2012 models, it was something I looked at one time and I was like, those are kind of weird. But apparently, people really, really, really like these knives, and I was aware of that. I remember Nut and Fancy going crazy about these knives, and everybody seems to have really positive opinions about that. These run $275. Some people agree with that, some people don't. As always, if you really, really like this knife and you can justify it, then and it's worth it to you, then I'd say go for it. Personally, I think $275 is a pretty amazing price for this, considering the materials used. You have what some people would consider an upgraded aluminum. You have Microtech's legendary fit and finish, which is excellent. By the way, everything meets up perfectly on this knife. It was absolutely flawless when I got it. No complaints whatsoever. Everything lined up perfectly, so no complaints there. You have M390 steel. You've got a 1/5 of an inch stock of it, and everything is solid and smooth. And you know, $275. Yeah, I'd say that's a pretty darn good price. So I've gone on for 20 minutes now, and I think that's just going to be the way that it's going to be. So in any case, that's pretty much all I can say. I hope I didn't leave anything out. There are, of course, multiple variants of these. You can get the Tanto version, which I'm not really a big fan of Tantos, so I'm really glad my wife went with the standard drop point non-serrated. You can also get them partially serrated, both Tanto and drop point. You can get it black, you can get it two-tone. There are versions of it that are like the special upgraded signature series, I guess, that have the claw logo, and they're black blades and they have bronzed hardware. I think you can get that bronze hardware, that signature series on some other different finishes on the blade, both Tanto and not Tanto. I don't know if you can get serrated and non-serrated that way, probably. And then it looks like on Blade HQ these are going to come out in different colors. I at least saw OD green, likely the desert tan and stuff like that. And then of course you have custom variants. You know, it's Microtech, so it's a lot of the same kind of thing that you generally see with Microtech's models. I have a high opinion of Microtech. Every Microtech that I've ever handled has operated perfectly, and it's had perfect fit and finish. I don't know what everybody else's experiences are, but I'm always happy to handle a Microtech. They feel like quality. If you've never owned one, my opinion is they're great. So if you're interested in this knife, I know I might be a little biased because this was a gift from my wife, but my wife doesn't watch my channels, so I say what I feel, or at least I try to. Maybe I am a little biased, but this is an awesome knife. It's a joy to carry, and it's a joy to hold. It's a joy to use, and it will likely be featured on my channel again as I continue to carry and use it, so I'll update people on that. So, by the way, for those of you who have been around for a while, I use the Manix all the time, and it's holding up perfectly. It still doesn't completely free drop, but the action has definitely gotten smoother, as you can see. So my video on how to get your knife smooth and the instructions on that, just letting it break in naturally, still stand. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like, and if you enjoyed this video, please check out my other content. I do have lots of videos of both expensive and inexpensive knives that I either do or don't like. Then please subscribe to my channel. Thanks again for watching, and have a great day.